Hello and welcome back. This is Lauren Kimball for ANI 150 and we are going to move on to part 2 of modeling a sci-fi crate. In the previous tutorial we found some concept art. I showed you how I broke it down by color in Photoshop so I had an idea of how I wanted to approach this model. We began the first half of the crate, so to kind of minimize the amount of work we'd have to do, I went ahead and cut the crate in half. We'll mirror the geometry later, and we went ahead and modeled the handle on the crate. We also grouped those pieces and we put them in their own layers and deleted history and all the stuff that's good scene hygiene, I guess, for lack of a better term. All the things that make our scene run efficient and keep things tidy. Okay, so the next part I want to work on, because the crate for the most part is done as far as the base of the low poly. We can go ahead and mirror geometry, but for right now, this is enough. What I want to do next is focus on these orange wrap extrusions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the handle, and I'm going to be focusing on this crate to make those extrusions. Now, there's a lot of ways you can approach it. I chose a way that would allow me to introduce some new tools to you. Again, the easiest, straightforward way to do this would be to just cut some lines and extrude them, but let's go at this a little bit differently. So first thing I want to do is I want to grab my crate and I want to duplicate it, because remember I had decided that I wanted these to be separate pieces. So I'm just going to move this off to the left and turn off my other crate. Of course, when I do that, you'll notice that it turns off both because I duplicated something on a layer. It's also going to adopt that layer that the original was on. So to get that one off the layer, I'm going to right-click the crate. I'm going to first select the duplicate, right-click the crate layer, and I'm going to remove selected objects. And when I do that, I can turn off this layer and the duplicate remains. Now I'm also going to go into the channel box here, click on the Translate Z channel and put that back to 0. And that way I go back to the same position as the original crate. Okay, so like I said, I want to kind of use this as my base to model this. And what I'm going to start is add some edge loops that kind of position where this crate's handle would be. So I'm going to go into the front view because I did this a little backward. Instead of modeling the front of the crate, which I mean I would assume this is more the front, or maybe this is the front. You know what, maybe I was fine. Maybe this is the front of the crate, not the side of the crate. I guess that's up to me. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go into my front camera view. If you modeled this in a different coordinate space than I did, this might be your side view. If you've been following along with me diligently, then this is the same view that our views match. Alright, so what I'm going to do is stop rambling and click on the crate and hold down Shift and right click and go to my Insert Edge Loop tool. And I'm going to go into the settings and I'm just going to throw down 2 edge loops using the equal multiplier. And cool, that's a good start. Immediately I see a problem though. So a little bit of the nature of the Insert Edge Loop tool is it's going to position itself based on the position and the curvature of different faces. So over here on these front faces, let me go to face mode. On these front faces, you'll notice that the lines that are created by this edge loop tool are nice and straight. But up here at the top of my crate, they start to dip inward. And on the bottom of my crate, they are dipping inward. The reason is because those faces are slanted to the side, particularly this line right here. This edge is slanted inward. When we created a bevel, we caused those faces to move. And so the edge loop wants to put itself in the middle of that curved face. And so we don't have a nice, even, clean cut that we would need for this handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click that edge, hold down Shift, and double click the other edge. I can go into my perspective mode and press 4. That shows my wireframe, just to make sure that I've completely selected those edge loops. I'm going to press 5, and I'm going to hold down Shift, right click, and delete edge. It's very important that you delete edges that way. If I were to just click delete, it looks like it worked, but it didn't. If I hold down my vertex view you'll see all these vertices have been left behind. It deleted the edges, but it did not delete the verts that were created. So I'm going to press undo, and this time I'm going to shift right click delete edge, and you'll notice those vertices are gone too. That is why it is so important that you delete your edges correctly. Okay? Alright, so we're going to introduce a new tool. I'm going to go into the front view again, and I'm going to shift right click on object mode, so important that it's green. Remember that's F8. Shift right click, and I'm going to use the multi-cut tool. Now we've used the multi-cut tool in class a few times where you can just sort of cut up and divide a face with one line as opposed to a whole edge. But there's other functions of this tool, and one of them is to cut directly through an object in a straight line. So I'm going to look at my reference and kind of observe the difference, or the distance between this corner, and roughly I want to say maybe right here. I'm going to click just above my box, hold down shift, and drag a line. Now when you hold shift, it snaps this straight line by increments of about 15. If I hold it straight down so that it's going directly vertical in my scene and let go, you'll see that it has created a nice line. Oops, I did not mean to do that twice. Hopefully I didn't create a vertice. Let me make sure. If you accidentally activate the multi-cut tool, it can sometimes just create a vertice. It didn't. Just had to double check. Okay, so it created a nice straight line, and as you can see up here, it did not care about the tilt on these polygon faces at the top. It cut straight through, and that's what I wanted it to do. So now I'm going to grab that multi-cut tool again. I could click over here, or I could press G. G is a hotkey that repeats a previous function. So I was using the multi-cut tool before. I press G, and it reactivates that tool. And so I'm just kind of looking at this. I think I'm going to go about yay far out. I don't know, that might be a little wide. Let's see. Honestly, from an angle, it looks fine, so I'm just going to keep that. Alright, so I've divided this out, and the easy thing to do would be just to select these faces and extrude, but I want to do things a little differently so that I can introduce some different tools to you. So again, there's like a lot of ways that you could approach making this. This is just one way, and remember, if you found a different way or want to explore different ways, absolutely go for it. Just make sure that you are merging your vertices, that you are using the cleanup tool to check for lamina faces or ingons, and you're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back using make sure I have my select tool on. I don't want to be activating the multi-cut tool again. I'm going to go to this side, and I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm just going to marquee select faces on either side of my selection and delete. Okay, so now I just got this cool ring. And like my crate, I don't want to have to fuss about both sides of this geometry that's going to be identical on either side of the axes. So I'm going to go ahead, press F8, or function F8 if you're on a Mac, hold down shift, and I'm going to use my edge loop tool. Specifically, it's equal edge multiplier. Type in 1, and no matter where I click in this middle face, it's going to add a line straight through the middle. Alright, gonna press B, Q, different software hotkey. Gonna hold down Q, and that's gonna give me my select tool. And I'm gonna right click faces, and I'm just gonna grab the faces on the opposing side of my mesh and just get rid of them. A couple other faces I wanna get rid of are these ones along the bottom, because this extrusion isn't coming from the bottom. So I wanna go ahead and delete this. And this here, this little interior lip, don't want that either. Just want these faces. Alright, so again, there's a lot of ways to do this. I'm purposely choosing this method because I want to introduce some stuff to you. One thing I want to introduce is the idea of flipping normals. So when I modeled this, the normals were facing inward. The way that I want to do this extrusion is I want to have this with the normals facing a different direction. Let me just show you so that it makes more sense. I'm going to go to edge mode, and what I would ultimately want to do is click this edge, go over here, shift click, double click, got that edge selected, click again, and click again. And if I press 4, you can see that I've selected just the outside edges, not the center parts, just the outside edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and use shift right click, extrude edge, And I'm just gonna, I don't know which arrow to use, I think it's the blue one. And I could just extrude these outward, but as you see, it creates this black. I don't want that, so I'm gonna press undo a couple of times, click off my edges, and I wanna flip the normals on this face so that my extrusion will not have all those normals facing the wrong direction. So I'm gonna click on faces, and I'm just gonna shift click my selection. I'm gonna shift right click, face normals, and I'm going to reverse. So this is a helpful tool to know about because, I mean, this was optional. I didn't have to approach it this way, but it's good to know that you can always reverse normals on a given polygon face in case you ever are modeling and something goes awry, or maybe you activate the wrong tool while you're modeling and suddenly everything turns black. If that happens, it usually means that you reverse the normals, and that is how you go about flipping them. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click edge, and I'm just going to shift click that line right there along that edge, click here, holding down shift, double click. Remember, you have to hold down shift while you're doing this, otherwise it deselects the previous selection. I'm going to press 4 so you guys can see exactly what it is that I want to have highlighted. Not this middle section, just these outside edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and press shift right click, extrude edge, and I'm going to use the little blue arrow to push this outward. Now immediately something's bothering me. The way this is extruding is leading to this kind of hump right here. It's not a nice flat geometric shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my extrude options. Remember that this always pops up when you're using a modeling tool that has, you know, interactive options you can change. If it doesn't, you can press T to reveal it. So what I want to activate is something called Keep Faces Together. By default, it's on, meaning when I extrude, all these faces are created that are welded together by default. But if I turn this off, so if I click this and turn it off, notice that everything is suddenly extruding directly upward, and none of them are connected. And as a result, you also don't have this weird, what would you call it, bend. So I'm going to turn that off and work from this. Alright, so that looks like a pretty good width out. It wasn't really that thick of a strap. I think that's fine. The next step is I'm going to go to faces, and I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of these middle faces. I can just click, shift click, and delete. Click, shift click, and delete. And now I'm going to worry about what I have here. Now because I said don't keep faces together, the bottom vertices on this are going to be merged, but the top aren't. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to go ahead and go into Vertex Mode. And when I click on this bottom vertex, look up here in your poly count menu. See how it says 1 vertice selected, and up here it's like 2? Because if I were to use my move tool, you would see that these faces, oh, I selected them both. Let me just click 1. These faces are actually not connected. So what I want to do first is select all of these, shift right click, merge vertices. And when I do that, you'll notice that originally this was set to like 70. You'll see it's been reduced to 56 vertices. So now when I click on any of these, it'll say 1, 1, 1. All of these faces have been merged, except right here where things have been separated. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this vertice, and I can do this on both sides, and I'm going to press W, hold down Shift, hold down, or not Shift, hold down V, hold down V and move straight upward. And what it does is it's snapping my vertice so that it matches here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to click, click, hold down V, and I'm going to snap it outward so that it matches. And then what I can do is grab this vertice and move it here. Let me see, do I like that? I think that's going to work. I like how that came out. So I could just snap this vertice and then merge vertices, but I really want to show you another cool tool. So I want this vertice to go to that vertice and combine, right? So up here in your poly modeling tab at the very top of your screen, you'll see this tool right here. That tool, if you hover over it, it'll tell you it's called Target Weld. I'm going to click on Target Weld, and I'm going to hover over this vertice, click it, and then I'm going to left mouse drag it here. And not only does it snap it to the other vertice that I have pointed it to, but it merges it automatically. So if I were to grab the select tool and highlight this, there's 1 vertice there. I didn't have to move and then merge. Welding does it in 1 stop. Also, you can weld lots of different components. You can weld edges together, for instance. It's not just vertices. So I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. I'm just going to grab that Weld Tool, click on this vertice, and left mouse click it over. Oops, I still had something selected on that side. Let's click it off and try again. Cool, cool. Let's do it again over here. Now if I was to middle mouse click, you'll notice a little green dot appears in the middle. That would have merged them together an equal distance. And honestly, I kind of am here for it because that looks like it created a little less deformation there. I wonder, let me just experiment a little and see what that would look like over here if I were to middle mouse drag this over. I kind of like that better. I kind of want to keep that. Let's do that again. Middle mouse click. Yeah, actually that looks better. I want to do that. Alright, so middle mouse click here with the Weld Tool and do it again here. To undo, like I did before, again as a reminder, is Control Z. If you're on a Mac, it's Command Z. Alright, so that looks good. I like it. Let's go ahead and reconnect them because you'll notice there's this giant gap here and that gap doesn't exist over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my edge mode. I'm going to click this edge here and double click so that I've got all these outside edges, and I'm going to do it again here. And honestly, let's go ahead and do it here and here as well. So we'll do the inside a little bit. Do it again out here, all the way down, over here, and all the way down. So I'm going to press 4 so you can see exactly what I have highlighted. In fact, I can use my what was it again? I think it was Option B. I always forget the hotkey. Option B to toggle my background. Again, I think it's Control B on a PC, but again, don't quote me. So you can perfectly see exactly the edges that I have highlighted. And I have a total of 25 edges highlighted in this mode. All right, going back to that gradient, I'm going to shift right click, and here I can go 5 so you can see the shaded view now. I'm going to shift right click, and I'm going to go to the Bridge tool. So what the Bridge tool does is, wait, what's wrong? Border just selected for the source target selection. Wait, what's wrong? Shift right click, bridge. Oh, it doesn't like that. Well, let's check out a few things. First, I'm going to go to select. One thing with bridge is you have to have your objects combined. You'll know they're combined if when you click one, the other highlights. That means these are one object, so that's not the problem. Let's try merging vertices and make sure that there weren't any missed vertices. There wasn't. Nothing changed. Maybe delete history. Okay, let's give this another shot and see what we get. I'm going to go over here, edge, click here, shift click here, shift click here. This time I'm going to leave the inner lip alone. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I didn't like that. I'm just going to do these outside edges. So now I've got 22 edges selected. If I press 4, you can see that it's just the outside edges. Shift right click and bridge. And wow. Requires equal number of borders to be selected. What am I doing wrong? There's 22. Well, how about this? Let's just do this part here and this part here. Shift right click and bridge. There we go. Okay, so that worked. But something up here it did not like. So let's try again. Click, 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 click. That's 14 edges, so 7 on each side. That should work. Shift right click and bridge. Okay, so I guess it just didn't like me selecting both ends between this gap. That's not a big deal. All right, so I'm going to click these two edges here, this one on the bottom and this one on the bottom, and press G. That repeats the last task. In this case, it was bridge. Click here, and G. So now that's going inward. All right, so I'm going to go to F8 so I can put it back in object mode, and I'm going to take a look at this with the crate. Alright, so I'm liking it. I think maybe it's a little close. Maybe I'll budget this way just a smidgen. Okay, and I notice in my reference art that this kind of dips in a little bit. Like it comes out and then moving, like from this point onward, it appears like it's going to get narrow. So that's a good thing to note. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my Insert Edge Loop tool. And it looks like it's still set to equal modifier, so that works. So right here in this third gap, I'm going to just click and add a line. And then I'm going to grab my vertices. And I'm going to grab these set of, on these 3 edges here. So 1, 2, 3, and that would be 12 vertices that I've selected. If I press 4, you can see the 12 I have selected. And I'm just going to scooch those in a little bit. Yep. That looks about right. I'm going to go back to object mode and turn on that crate. And I feel like this handle is a little bit wide, so let me center pivot this and maybe make it a little narrower. Let's see, does that look right? I think that looks right. Maybe move it back a little, this closer edge. So I'm just kind of adjusting to make it match my concept art a little bit more. Okay, so now we've got this going. I'm going to go ahead and delete its history. I could mirror the geometry, but I'm not quite done with it yet. What I want to do next is, you'll notice there's this indentation here where a buckle goes, and so that will be my next step. But first, let's go ahead and save. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and this iteration I'm just going to name Strap, so I know what I built. Okay, so I could put this in a display layer, but I'll just turn off the crate layer for now. And let's see, how do I want to go about this? I think the best way to go about this would be to use my Extrude Edge loop tool and set it to equal multiplier of 2. And I'm just going to click this, and I'm going to click this so that they match up. And then I will use my select tool, and I will shift click this line and shift click this line. And the reason I do that is I want these two new edges that I've created on both pieces. If I press 4, you can see exactly what I've selected. It should be a grand total of 28 edges. So you'll be able to tell that from your polygon count menu, which if you don't have it turned on, we did touch on in the first tutorial, but I'll revisit. All you have to do is go to Display, Heads Up Display, and activate that poly count so that you can see exactly what you have selected. Alright, so I'm going to look at this, and I'm thinking it's a little bit wider in the picture. I'm thinking maybe this? Yeah, it looks about right. Okay, so it looks like the top part of the buckle goes up a little, oh, maybe it doesn't go up a little higher. I think this one comes in a little more. Like it's a little shorter on the bottom, a little taller on the top. Maybe push this up a little more. Yeah, just kind of eyeballing it. I think that looks right. So I'm going to go in and just delete these faces. Boom, boom. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these two faces too. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click edge, and I'm going to click the top edge and the bottom edge. And I'm going to go this way and change my camera view a little. Hold down shift, and I'm just going to extrude this out a little. See how it's extruding? And then I'm going to let go of shift, and I'm going to press V. And now I'm going to snap this so that it aligns with these vertices on the side. Okay? Now I'm going to grab this new edge I've made, press Q so the move tool is not in the way. And I'm going to click here to this adjacent edge, and you guessed it, shift right click, bridge. And then I can click here, and just tap G, and that just repeats the previous command, so you don't have to keep clicking shift right click. So grab these two, 1, 2, and G. Oops, I accidentally grabbed something else. Let me try again. G, there we go, that's more like it. And then click, and G. Alright, and now we've got this really great looking indentation for our buckle. And that's good. That's what we want. I'm going to go ahead and grab this and maybe delete its history. I could freeze transformations. That's also a really good idea, so that if I were to move this, I could always zero this back out and move it back to where I wanted it on the crate. That's one of the important things about freezing transformations. Also, if you have changed any of your scales, like maybe scale was 2.3 or something, that's going to mess with your UV maps later. So you always want to make sure your scale is zeroed out, even if your translate isn't. Okay, so this thing is pretty much ready to go. We're just going to go ahead and design a buckle. Oh, I did notice the bottom here. The bottom is supposed to taper in. Let's turn this crate off. I think the best way to handle this would be to go to click it, right click, vertex, and I'm just going to use my Weld tool for this. Should I use my Weld tool? Yeah, I think I want to use Weld. So I'm just going to use my Weld tool. And I clicked it, and I left-clicked to drag it to point. Now these two are sticking out, so what I'm going to have to do is grab my select tool, and then I'm going to have to grab my move tool. So select is Q, move is W. Hold down V for snap to vertice, and then move it back so that it snaps and aligns with those new ones. And now I'm going to go to object mode instead of component mode, click on my crate, and there we go. That looks a lot better. It's a little high, So maybe what I'll do is grab this edge right here, not on the crate. Oh, sorry. The beauty of having pause, if you noticed it, the recording stopped abruptly. Sometimes when I use my hotkeys in Maya, it'll activate my recorder, so sorry about that. Anyway, I was going to put this in solo mode, but I managed to get a hold of it without doing that. And bring this down just a smidge so it looks a little bit more like the reference. Actually, kind of looks like this doesn't end sharply. It looks like there might be a little bit of an edge, but honestly, I'm not going to bother with it that much. It's enough for the project. It matches close enough. Okay, so I've got this going on. I really think this is mostly done. I could go ahead and delete history, freeze transformations, etc. And I could go ahead and mirror the geometry, but I'm not because there's method to that madness. For right now, I'm just going to take this and put it in its own display layer. In the display layer, I'm going to call this strap layer. Okay. Oh, not strayo layer, strap layer. Oh, why is that not typing in a P? There we go. Okay. So I actually didn't have to do that step right then, but I wanted to. Oh, hey, that's interesting. It didn't actually put my strap in that layer. Not a problem. I'll just click it, right-click the layer, and add selected. There we go. Actually, I didn't need to put that in a layer right now, but I would have eventually, so I'm just going to roll with it. I'm also going to save my scene because I made some adjustments to the strap. And I'm going to just kind of design a really simple buckle. There's no close-up view of this buckle, so I just kind of imagine this like a lockbox that I used to have, where it had this little angular clasp. So I'm just going to create a simple box. And for this simple box, I will not need the back of it. So remember, we got to think about the number of, oh shoot, okay. Now I know why I want to put that on a layer. Turn off the strap and the crate for a moment. Okay, so I just want to right click this and get into face mode. Sometimes when you have other polygons in your scene, Maya can't decide which one you're trying to do component mode on. I'm going to delete that back face. That way we're just saving some of our, or we're managing our polygon budget by getting rid of faces that we don't really need. So I'm going to go ahead and press F8. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my crate and my strap layer again. Alright, so I'm going to go into the side view. You can sort of see, maybe turn off the crate so you can see that hole. I'm going to just move this in and move it up. And now I'm going to shrink it so that this box kind of fits the inside of this. Not like super close, we want it to be just kind of close, but with a little bit of space. And then shrink it so it fits. Might have to move it up a little bit. Yeah, because we want this clasp to have room to move, theoretically, if it were going to move, snap upward maybe. Okay, so I got this little box, and I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down. And I'm going to move it into this area, so I know where it's going to be fitting in. Like that. Actually, one cool thing we could do, and we did this with a previous assignment, you can tap D. And what D does is it will allow you to move your pivot point. So if I hold down V, I can snap this so that it aligns with the back vertices, press D again, and then I can snap this by holding down V so that it aligns with where this strap is touching the mesh. And then I can go in and just shrink this down. It looks like it's going to go inside a little bit. Alright, so again, I was going to make a really simple buckle. What I'm going to do is use my Insert Edge Loop tool, except I think that might be my Auto Weld tool. Yeah, Shift right click the mesh. Let's grab that. No, gotta make sure I got the right thing. Make sure I'm in object mode. Shift right click, and I'm just going to go, where is it? Insert Edge Loop tool right in front of me, of course, where I never look. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and add just one edge loop, and I'm just going to add one single edge loop. Again, I'm basing this off of a little buckle that I had on a lockbox I used to own, and basically it just had a little indented out buckle, and you could snap this buckle up or down, and then it would unhinge and let you open the box. So it's very simple. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but that gets the job done. So there's our little buckle. And I'm going to go ahead and freeze transformations and delete its history, and I'm not worried about it any further. I'm going to go ahead and turn my crate back on, and now I've got my crate, and I've got my buckle, And what we're going to do next is take this strap, and I'm going to shift right click, and I'm going to go ahead and mirror it. So let's go ahead and mirror it. Looks like it's facing Z, so we're going to merge on Z. This time I do want it to merge its vertices and combine with the original, and apply. And there we go. So I'm just going to move this to the side for a moment, and I'm going to solo mode this. Remember, solo mode is Control 1. And I'm going to grab this center edge, because if I keep the center edge in, this middle portion is 10 faces. But if I grab this center edge and I shift right click delete, very important, and I grab these faces, now there's only 5 faces. Or was I looking at the right thing? Hold on a second. When I grab faces, yeah, there were 10 faces. Sorry, I got it mixed up with the tries there. Double click, shift right click, delete, grab faces, and now there is 5 faces. So it's just a great way for you to kind of keep your poly count in line. Just make sure that if you put in an edge loop to chop something up, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay with the scene. I'm going to press Control 1, get out of solo mode, and I'm going to go grab this thing again, and I'm going to mirror it on the x-axis this time. And this time I do not want it to merge vertices, but it's okay to be combined. I don't mind that. Apply. All right, cool. So this is all one object, and it's ready to go. It really doesn't matter. If you want these to be separate, you sure can. I'm just combining them for the time being. I may separate them later. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and delete my history. Everything else looks good. Let's do the same to the crate. Shift right click, mirror, because I accidentally closed out of the box thoughtlessly. This time I am going to merge my vertices, and it is also going to be on the x-axis, mirror. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this edge here, double click. If I press 4, you can see it grab the edge loop all the way around. If I was not going to delete this edge, we would have the center portion is made up of 72 faces. Because remember, you also have these faces on the inside lip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click this edge, shift right click, delete, and if I grab the faces again, you will see that there are only 36 faces now. So a significant drop in our face count by deleting that edge. Very important. Okay, let's go address the buckle. I'm going to first grab this crate and delete history because we don't need that history anymore. And I'm going to go in and grab this buckle, and I'm going to shift right click because again I closed out a mirror tool. I do not want it to merge vertices. I do want it to jump over the Z axis, apply. So now you can see I have buckles on both sides. And then I'll take those two and do it again, and now I've got 4 buckles. Okay, so there are the buckles, there are the straps, there is the crate, and lest we forget, let's turn on those little side handle group. Since everything else is merged, I still don't want to merge those just yet. It'll be easier to UV if I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab this group, and I'm going to shift right click, and again with the mirror, now I've got a handle on one side and the other, and I'm going to go ahead and change this to handle group. And this one can be the, well actually it looks like it's just a combination. Yeah, I'm just going to let these be merged. So how you merge 2 polygons is you shift right click and you combine them. Now it knocked it out of the group, that's fine, it made a brand new thing, deleted its history, and it deleted its group that it was in. But I'm going to go ahead and name these for the time being. I'm going to call this handles underscore low. I'm going to call this one buckles underscore low because these are the low poly version. Handles, oh no, sorry, handles, straps underscore low, and this up here is going to of course be the crate underscore low. Okay, and then I can not shift, but you know, because this camera's in the way, I can hold down. Let's see, what is the hotkey for this? On the Mac, it is Command. I want to say it's Control on the PC, but I essentially just want to grab these 4 things. I could just grab it like this, and I press G, or I'm sorry, Control G, and I'm going to just double click this, and I'm going to call this crate low group, GRP for group. So now I've got them in a nice group as well. And let's see, everything is still organized on its layers except the handles, because the handles were merged together. It created a new object. Let's go in there and grab those handles and add them to their layer. That's good, because we're going to want to turn these things off. I'm going to go ahead and grab the buckles, and I'm going to add them to their own layer. And there we go. Oh yeah, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I don't have to add layer because I've got low at the end. Typically, I add the word layers, or yeah, just so that I don't have any double naming. And so now that I'm done with this, I'm going to go File, Save Scene, and I'm just going to call this Crate 5. And this time I'm going to say low poly, so I know exactly what it is that I modeled in this scene, what the big changes were. And we are done with a low poly section of this. What we need to do now is build up the high poly. So in the typical game pipeline, you usually have a really high poly mesh, and then you retopologize it into a low poly, but we'll do that in another lesson. For right now, I just want to focus on building, kind of going the opposite way, where I have this low poly crate, and then I'm going to just build it into a high poly that I can bring into ZBrush and kind of mess around with. So let's take a look at our model. It looks like it is 748 faces. The polygon limit for this particular, oh gosh, I just realized we forgot the top of the box. There's this bit right here. But I think we've done enough in this part of the tutorial. We're just gonna knock that little box out in the next tutorial because it's already been going for like 30 minutes. So we've got, the crate's almost done, but forgot about this big old piece here. So in the next tutorial, let's address that.